Welcome to Conversations Different, a podcast from the Santa Fe New Mexican about interesting people, places, and issues of northern New Mexico. This week, we are really happy to talk to Jenna Naranjo Winters about her documentary film on famed sculptor Michael Naranjo, also her dad. Welcome, Jenna.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is just a real thrill. You're in Los Angeles, of course, and we're here in New Mexico. But and when I say we, I'm talking about our producer Ernesto, who no one can see, but he puts this all together. I don't want people to think I'm using the royal we in a podcast sense. Um, this is just so exciting because, you know, for to be open to everybody, Jenna and I met at the New Mexican years ago when she was a reporter and I was a freelancer, and to see her grow and now to produce her first film. I mean, this is just an amazing life trajectory for you.
Thanks. Just hearing you say that, I literally have tears in my eyes because it really has, all of this has just been so full circle. But, at the end of the day, although I am in Los Angeles, I am a New Mexican in my heart. And so to be here with you just means so much to me. And, I did start my career at the New Mexican. So just to reflect on all of this is incredible.
Yeah. So talk about Dream Touch Believe. That's your film and the reason you decided to do it. So talk about what made you even start this huge process.
Yes. So I started my career at the New Mexican. I went on to work in television news, and then I went on to work in true crime. I worked for several true crime series, America's Most Wanted, another one called Snapped. And after doing that for about, I would say, like 15 to almost 20 years, I began to grow very depressed, as you might imagine, working on these really horrible crime stories. I decided that I wanted to share something hopeful, something that would inspire people, and something that, would inspire me to use my creativity in a different way. And when I sat down to think about it, I realized that the story I wanted to share had been there staring at me all along. And that is my father's story, my father and mother's story, because she's really a big part of it too. Um, And when I realized that this really was my purpose, it kind of shocked me because I never made a film before. And I knew that film would be the best way to share this story because at this point, my dad, you know, he had really had a full and complete career. And so, of course, he's been in the news here and there, but no one's ever really shared his complete story. And so I had never been a filmmaker, but I thought, why not give it a try? And had I known just how challenging this was actually going to be, I might never have started. But that's really where this came from.
Right. And that's actually something that has been a characteristic of you that I've seen over your lifetime that I've known you, is that you like to stretch outside of your comfort zone. I mean, you were doing great at the New Mexican. You were getting promoted. You were writing. You got to cover your own community, which is always huge. You're from Santa Clara Pueblo, and you were covering that, Powake, Santa Fe. Not all of us get to write about where we grew up and tell the truth, in a way that comes from understanding. Yet you uprooted everything to go to graduate school. You went to Northwestern, and then you switched from print to, video and production, television. And I just think that you make yourself uncomfortable to grow. And that must have helped you in making this film.
Well, thank you for saying that. I guess I've never quite seen it that way, but you're right. I did love my job at the New Mexican. I loved covering the tribes, the communities where I was from. Some of those stories are still in my heart, and I talk about them with my daughter a lot, just reflecting on some of the beautiful people and traditions that I experienced while working at the New Mexican. But, I think maybe one of the reasons that I like to go outside of my comfort zone is because that's what I've watched my parents do their entire careers. They have always stretched the limits. They've identified impossible goals and then reached for those goals. So I guess perhaps I was just trying to follow in their footsteps. And I decided that leaving home would be very uncomfortable. I'd never lived in a city before. So I moved to Chicago, as you mentioned, went to grad school. And yeah, I think maybe that's just become part of my fabric is just making myself uncomfortable so that I can grow. And I have definitely grown and learned from this, probably more than anything. We just had
Mhm.
our California premiere, and in the past week, I really felt as though this was like a life event for me creating this film. And I would compare it to, having a child
Okay.
or getting married. It's become a part of the fabric of my soul, really.
Oh, that's just I think that really speaks to the creative process, which is something you witnessed in your life growing up. And maybe talk about what it was like to grow up in a home of creativity where you saw your dad create and your mom kind of I read in one of the articles that she's the glue that holds everything together.
She is, yeah. So I was born in Santa Clara Pueblo, and pretty much since infancy, journalists would come to visit our home to interview my dad, even back then, which was more than 45 years ago. But yeah, the journalists were always there. And I think, the creativity was always there. And so what really sparked an interest was in me was watching those journalists ask my dad questions. I would hide in the corner and listen to the questions that they'd ask. And so that's really where my inspiration to follow this career came from. But as far as creativity is concerned, there were never any limits in a traditional sense. My dad, if you're not familiar with his story, he comes from a creative family in Santa Clara Pueblo, and he wanted to become a sculptor. And that was his goal. But he was drafted to the Vietnam War at just 23 years old, lost his eyesight, the use of one hand, but went on to become a sculptor anyway. Um, so he creates sculptures through touch. And his intention with their creation is for them not just to be viewed visually, but through touch, if anyone so desires. And so, growing at home with these sculptures, we could touch them, we could play with them. There was never this idea that art is fragile or that you can't experience in just a visual form. And so I think that really shaped the way that I wanted to tell his story as well.
That makes so much sense. New Mexico, as everybody who lives here knows, is a very small state. And one of the things that linked us when I first met you is that when my husband was in kindergarten, I think it was kindergarten at Taos Pueblo, your dad was a substitute teacher there. And it's something that David never forgot. For some reason, it made an impression on him, and he followed his career and his story. And in telling it, I think about the dream part. He wanted to be a sculptor. He kept touching when he lost his eyesight. But think about sculpting with the use of only one hand. I mean, what dedication and determination your dad had.
He is the most determined person I have ever met. And I won't say one of the most, he is the most
Yeah.
determined person I've ever met. And so, for him, nothing has ever been impossible. And I really relied on that idea when I was making this film, which took me more than 10 years.
Wow.
I wanted to give up thousands of times, thousands. And I sat in my office alone quite often wondering, is anyone going to watch this when I'm done? Where is this going to go? Why am I doing this? I should just forget it already. But he never gave up. My mother never gave up. And so I thought, well, I will fail as their child if I give up, but I will also fail as a mother because my daughter, in the time that I started this, I became a mother.
That's right.
And I thought, I need to keep going for her so that someday when she's seeking her dream, she will not give up. So there's this passing on of determination. And so within that idea, I found determination for myself to be able to finish this.
Yeah, and I think that's very characteristic of your entire family is when they decide to do something, they do it. I mean, when you said a creative family, you were talking about sculptors, actors, writers, everything. And it's the Naranjo family is one of the most noted in the not just the indigenous world, but in the art world as a whole. So you have a legacy to live up to and to be inspired by.
I absolutely feel like I have a lot to live up to. I look up to every single one of my family members, my aunts, my cousins, my uncles. They all do these incredibly artistic things, whether it's writing, sculpting, creating pottery, whatever it might be. Um, they they're tremendous, and so I did feel part of this was to honor them, to also honor the ancestors that I have never met before.
Yeah.
I wanted to preserve this story because it really is a story of perseverance. And so I wanted to preserve this for the future generations, not just of my family, but the future generations of anyone who might see this film. I do believe that now more than ever, our world needs beacons of hope and stories that inspire us. And this is a story from our generation that I feel could carry into future generations. I know that we're often inspired by historical figures, but this is someone who's living today, and I feel like it's a story that is timeless.
It is. On that note, we'll take a quick break and be back in a moment with more conversations different.
We make renewable doable. We're positive energy solar for a cleaner, brighter future for all. Positive energy's the right call. Feel good about your energy bill. Help save the planet too. Your trusted solar company, working hard for you. Generate positive energy. Positive energy solar.
We are back with Conversations Different, talking to Jenna Naranjo Winters about her film, Dream, Touch, Believe, and the journey that got her from inspiration to finishing it. So the film is done and it has been showing at film festivals, including at the Santa Fe International Film Festival. And it did very well. It's been winning prizes, hasn't it?
Yes, which is still a shock to me. I've gone into this with my own personal motto, which is no limits, but no expectations. And so we have won 2 awards in our film festival journey. And I'm going to say something silly. I am so grateful to have received a physical award, because if I didn't have something that I could hold on to or actually physically look at, I would believe that I made it up. I still cannot believe that I won these awards. And I think that's because I did this in what I would view as a very unorthodox way. I'd never made a film before. I didn't know what I was doing. We have a very small team, very small budget. And so just to have the kind of reception that we're having, it's still shocking to me. I get chills thinking about it. Our film premiered in Oklahoma City at the Dead Center Film Festival, which was wonderful. And then we followed that experience in Santa Fe, as you mentioned, which to me was probably like the climax of my career, the way I see it right now. Just to share this story at home with the people that I love in a movie theater that I grew up going to, the Jean Cocteau Cinema.
Yeah.
It was such a beautiful full circle moment.
And you sold out like almost immediately.
Yes, which was also shocking, and I kept thinking, "This has gotta be a mistake." Every time something good happens, I'm thinking, "Is this a mistake?" And I don't know why I'm feeling that way, but yeah, it's just
Yeah.
all been so unreal.
That's that's amazing. And I think the reception was really so warm and people liked it so much that it's a tribute to your whole mission in providing inspiration for people because these are hard times. And this is a story of somebody who realized an almost impossible dream.
Yes. Um, I do feel that people are responding to this idea that the time has come to believe in ourselves and each other. And regardless of your age or ability, it is important to believe in your dreams.
Mhm.
One thing I learned about my dad, which I was shocked at in this process, is over the course of the production, initially, um, I interviewed him over the phone just to learn more about his life. I followed, the journalistic practice that I follow when I'm producing television. I thought, okay, I'm going to go about this in the way that I know how. And the way I know is to do my research.
Right?
So we talked on the phone for weeks and weeks and hours. And toward the end of our conversations, I asked, Dad, do you have any dreams left? And I thought for sure he would say, "Oh, no, I've done everything. I've touched the David. I've met presidents and popes. I don't have anything left."
Yeah.
And I think he was close to 80 years old at this point, and he said, "Oh, yeah, I have a big dream." And I thought, what is he going to say? And he told me that it had been one of his lifelong dreams to see this incredible, iconic sculpture called the End of the Trail, which is a huge, beautiful sculpture of a warrior atop a horse, and it's a monumental, huge piece. And so, as part of our documentary, we actually got to film him touching it. But to me, the takeaway was that it doesn't matter your age. You should dream the biggest dream until your dying day. And those were his exact words, which kind of killed me when he first said it. He said something like, "One day the sun isn't going to come up for me anymore, but until that day, I'm a sculptor and I will chase my dreams." And I thought, whoa, you don't hear people talk about their mortality in that way, but you often don't hear people talk about their dreams in that way.
Yeah.
I think we're used to hearing children talk about their dreams, but not so much adults. And I really loved that.
Yeah, that's really important because so many times in life we think, you get married, you have your kids, they grow up, and then what do you do the rest of the last 20 years you're alive? Well, you keep dreaming and hoping and wishing. And um, I think your research in doing that and keep asking him questions got you probably a great scene in your film because you wouldn't have known to take him to the end of the trail had you not been talking to him for hours and hours. And what is that like interviewing your dad versus interviewing, complete strangers?
It was a little scary. It was actually really scary because, there are certain things that you love this person and you don't want to hurt them. Yet at the same time, you need to know everything in order to convey their life properly. One of the hardest things I had to ask him about was his war injury, and exactly what happened on that day. He was in the rice fields of Vietnam, and an enemy soldier threw a grenade at him, which he literally caught and tried to throw away. But that didn't happen in time. But the hardest part I noticed was when he was talking about that, to hear him talk about his fellow soldiers and their fates, which some, died in the field that day. And so to have to talk to him about that, but then ask again and again, toward the end, I felt horrible to
Yeah.
have him relive that. And I think he knew it was an important part of the story. And I've often heard that, you know, veterans who've gone through combat don't like to talk about that. And so I felt awful. So there were some big challenges within that. And then there were some incredible joys. I also interviewed my mother,
Yeah.
and I got to hear very intimately about my
Mhm.
parents' first meeting and their first kiss. And it was very funny and kind of awkward
I was gonna say that's
sometimes, but
embarrassing.
it was embarrassing, and it's one of the favorite parts of the movie. The best part about this is watching it with an audience and getting to hear the parts that people laugh or cry at, or the fact that they even laugh or cry at all is like, wow, they actually like this. But
Yeah.
I think one of the funniest, cutest parts is my parents' unlikely meeting. So yeah.
So where did they meet? This sounds interesting.
Yes. So, and the reason I wanted to include that was because as I was filming this, people would come up to me and they were so curious about my parents. They'd say, well, how did they meet? Did they know each other before your dad was blind? There were all of these questions. And so I began to see that this would be a very important thing because, my dad has never seen my mom. They did meet after he was blind. And so
Oh,
yeah, and that's a very curious thing for people. My dad has never seen my sister and I, and that's just normal for us. But my parents met. They were both living in Albuquerque, both newly divorced. And as it turns out, my mom moved next door to my dad's sister, Tessie,
oh,
and
okay.
they became wonderful friends. And so my aunt Tessie set them up on a blind date, no pun intended. Yes.
Oh, only you could tell that joke or your dad. No pun. That's a great story. And Tessie knows and she knows people very well. So she probably knew how it would turn out when she did it, or at least had an idea that it might work. That's a great story. So they met, and did they fall in love quickly? Was it easy, or was this, one of those complicated relationships?
Well, it's a little bit of a spoiler for the movie, but I'll tell you because it is such a sweet part. At first, my mom says she just thought my dad was like, okay, like a nice guy, but she didn't know that my aunt's intention was for them to get married. And so on the second date, my aunt said, no, I really want you to marry my brother. And my mom was like, you're
Wow.
crazy. Are you kidding me? And then I guess this thing happened where my dad just walked in the door and my mom had this epiphany of how confident he was and how handsome. And then she goes right into the first kiss. So her exact words are it was love at well, it wasn't first sight, but I guess love at second sight. And then the rest is
Oh.
history. So as you can imagine, I personally am very grateful for Aunt Tessie's matchmaking skills.
Oh, that's great. And on that note, we'll take a quick break and be back in a moment with more Conversations Different.
This is Patrick Dorsey, publisher of the Santa Fe New Mexican. Looking to reach a wider audience and grow your business? For 175 years, the Santa Fe New Mexican has been the trusted voice of Santa Fe, with unmatched local reach in print and online. In addition to our long-standing, independent, family-owned newspaper, we have a full-fledged marketing team with the expertise to help you succeed in the 21st century. From traditional print to precision-targeted digital advertising, we have the tools to connect you with your ideal customers. Partner with us and see the results for yourself. Advertise with the Santa Fe New Mexican and unlock your business's full potential. Visit us at santafenewmexican.com/advertising or call us at 505-995-3852. Thank you.
We are back with Jenna Naranjo Winters talking about her film. This is Conversations Different. So you've been to film festivals, and I don't know, do you have more coming? What's the trajectory for the life of a documentary like this?
Well, I've definitely been learning as I go, which
Mhm.
has been challenging and wonderful. Um, we've played at 4 film festivals so far. After Santa Fe, we went to Naples, Florida, which was amazing because the audience there isn't familiar with my dad's story and they loved it. We won the audience award. So that felt really encouraging to me. And then this past week, we just finished at the Red Nation International Film Festival in Los Angeles, and we were nominated for Best Documentary amongst a group of really incredible films and documentarians. So I felt really honored by that. Um, I'm waiting to hear back from a really solid handful of more festivals all over the globe, really. Some out of the
Nice.
country, some in the country, and I'm hoping for good results. But again, no expectations. But one thing that I really would love to see happen is to be able to share this film with the broadest audience possible. Um, I am a first time filmmaker. I'm an unknown entity. I have a team of less than 5 people. So, I really am the underdog, and I realize that. Uh, but I hope that a distributor will help us share this film widely because I know that this story has impact. I've seen the way that it affects audiences, not just the film, but the story. I've been watching my dad and mom share their story with everyone from kindergarten classrooms to ballrooms of veterans. And the reaction is always the same. Sometimes there's tears, but there's always inspiration. And
Mm.
so, if anyone listening knows a sales agent or a distributor, someone who can really help us share this story widely, I would love any help I can get. Of course, I'm researching that on my own, but nothing helps like having a network or someone who knows someone. So, that's what I'm working on next.
Oh, that makes sense, and you're very determined, so I'm gonna open the newspaper and see Dream Touch Believe coming to a network near you just soon. I bet you because, people need to be inspired, I think right now.
I agree.
Yeah,
It's hard to watch the news sometimes.
yeah.
And I always love, sometimes, various shows will have that one like 30-second inspirational story. I think that's my favorite part of the news these days because otherwise it's very depressing.
Yeah, it is, it is. I wanna go back to something you said in an earlier segment because I think this is a great story for people to hear, and I've heard it from you in years past. Talk about what you meant when you said he saw the David or he touched the David, because that's just a great
Yes,
story.
absolutely. So midway through my dad's career, one of his big dreams was to see the work of Michelangelo. And when I say see, I'm actually talking about he touches the sculptures, and those tens and thousands of touches are relayed into his mind's eye so he can visualize what
Wow.
something might actually look like. And so, touching the work of other artists has been a really important and big part of his career. Um, just a step before that, before he was able to touch that sculpture, he actually wanted to present a sculpture to the Pope. And this is an important part of the story because when he presented that sculpture to Pope John Paul II, which was another incredible moment in his lifetime, that really opened the doors for him. He was in Italy. He had a letter, from the Vatican. He had this picture of himself with the Pope, and so he was permitted to touch anything he wanted,
Wow.
whether it was the Moses or the Pieta by Michelangelo. And one of the things he wanted to do was touch the David, but he stood on a chair and could only touch David's toes. And
Oh,
so a few years later, he went back. A camera crew came and said, "If you could touch anything, what would it be?" And he said, "The David." And so they built him this scaffolding, and it was just this really beautiful and incredible moment for him to, climb the scaffolding and just touch every part of that sculpture. And I think it
wow.
was actually a really inspirational moment for me. I was probably only 10 years old.
Okay.
We were there with him,
Oh,
but we were, I was down below looking up, watching him, but I was also watching that camera crew. I noticed how important it was that they were documenting this beautiful and emotional moment. And I think that really stuck with me throughout my entire career, really. Even when I was working on those true crime stories, I always tried to approach each story looking for an emotional hook because I think at the end of the day, we want to feel something. whether
Yeah.
it's hope, sorrow, joy. I mean, we get so trapped in our phones sometimes trying to numb our brain. I think we really want to feel something. And so that's always been my goal as a journalist or a television producer or now a filmmaker. I just want people to feel an emotion. It doesn't matter what emotion it is, but I think emotions are really what connect us.
Yeah.
And so when people watch this film, even if they don't like art or even if they aren't interested in the Vietnam War, I think there are emotions in this film that cast a broad net and that might attract pretty much anybody.
No, I think so. There's a lot to lure the viewer in, and I think you really get at something important is the power of the visual. Showing as like we used to tell you in journalism, show don't tell, but with a camera on somebody, it's much easier and so powerful. And in your filming, did you like follow your dad around and your mom? Is that how you put together the visual part of it? That must have been interesting as well.
It really was. I followed them a little bit. We did a lot of interviews. I spent probably close to a year going through all of the historical archives to kind of show the progression with
Hmm.
all of the news clips, with all of the TV clips, digging deep and looking into the White House presidential libraries to find some of the photos and videos of my dad meeting different presidents. So yeah, there was a lot of research there, and so the film really combines historical documents, historical footage, present day footage, and when I'm speaking about the present day footage, I have to give a shout out to another Santa Fean, our cinematographer. His name is Bill Stengel. He's based in Santa Fe, and he is largely responsible for the beautiful look and feel of the footage that we shot.
Nice.
I'm just so captivated by his work. And then we also had the help of another former colleague of mine, Steve Cobran. He and I had worked together at America's Most Wanted on a case out of New Mexico, actually. And I
Ooh,
always remembered the heart and soul that he put into those pieces. And so when we needed an editor, I was incredibly grateful to have had Steve's help. So they're also largely responsible for the way that the visuals and just the feeling of all of this turned out.
yeah. That's just an incredible team, and it speaks well of you to get so many talented people who are going to work on this with you, and so that you produce something that you're proud of, and that hopefully will have an impact beyond, just the film festival circuit. Because once people get a hold of it and watch it, this is something that's going to have a lot of legs, I think.
I sure hope so. That's definitely my goal. Um, and at the very least, I'm grateful that I was able to preserve this story for my daughter and for New Mexico, really.
Yeah, yeah. When you think about your career, so you started in print, you became a TV person, then you are now a filmmaker. What do you do next, Jenna?
That's a great question. I've been asking myself that a lot lately. Right now, my primary focus is to get this story out into the world in as big a way that I possibly can. But my brain, and this goes back to what you had said initially. I so badly want to be able to sit down and relax and drink a cup of tea and do some bird watching, but my brain is not allowing me to do that. I've just had ideas flowing and coming. I have ideas for short films, scripted series, and I don't know what I'm going to do next, but I feel certain that um, I'm not going to allow myself to sit still.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't know.
Yeah. I don't think that's in you, but especially as much as you run and all the exercise and everything you do, you're going to keep moving inside and out, basically.
Yeah, I just can't do it.
Yeah.
I'll find that project. I think it's a matter of picking one. There are a lot of ideas in my brain right now.
Yeah. Well, this is a great moment for Indigenous storytelling. So I think there's a lot of opportunity out there too. So that's kind of exciting.
Oh, it absolutely is. I have met so many incredible filmmakers, indigenous filmmakers, and the stories that they're sharing right now are so powerful,
Yeah.
so important. But I think, although they might be about an indigenous person or place, these are stories that are about all of us.
Yeah. They're
Um,
universal. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
well, I look forward to what you do next. And on this note, this has been another Conversations Different. We'll be back next week. Thank you for listening to Conversations Different, hosted by me, Inez Russell Gomez, editorial page editor for the Santa Fe New Mexican. Our weekly episodes would not be possible without your support. We hope you enjoy them and keep listening. New episodes drop every Tuesday. Consider signing up for our newsletter so you never miss an episode, and while you're at it, consider subscribing to the Santa Fe New Mexican. Our podcast is available by visiting our website, santafenewmexican.com/podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Conversations Different with Inez Russell Gomez is produced by Matt Dalside and Ernesto Cisneros, published by the Santa Fe New Mexican, a local and independent newspaper owned by Robin Martin.